Good afternoon to everyone who is watching us in Spain on the live streaming on that camera over there. You're very welcome too. Here we are in beautiful, sunny London. It could well be that Spain hits 68 million visitors this year, maybe even 70 million visitors. Enrique, how did Spain get there? And are you content with soaring passenger numbers, or should we be looking beyond the crowds?
We're very happy of having another breaking year in terms of arrivals, but I have to say we're happier that expenditure is growing 3 times faster than arrivals. We are up 3% in terms of British tourists into Spain this year, but expenditure is up by 10%. And our strategic marketing plan, 2012 to 2016, has as a main objective to increase profitability. So yes, we are happy, but we are not looking purely at the numbers. We're looking beyond the numbers. We're looking at the kind of tourism we're getting and how they contribute to the economy in Spain.
For us, growth is a good thing. We think travel delivers lots of benefits to local economies, it creates jobs and so forth, and done in the right way, it's good that it's growing because it provides profits to the destination which they can then reinvest, and you keep the cycle going. That said, there are challenges in the quality of the product in terms of how many people can a particular experience or a destination support without actually degrading the reason why people are going there in the first place. So I think our challenge as an industry and as ABTA is really to balance the benefits of tourism against the potential costs, and make sure that we've got a sustainable product and industry for the long term.
The most thankless of tasks: to persuade the British, who have been travelling in their millions every summer for decades, to go beyond the beach. How on earth do you do that? It's something which all beach-based destinations struggle with, and yet few of them have such immense cultural riches as Spain does.
Sand and beach accounts for 85% of all business out of the UK into Spain. We have been trying to change this for the last 30 years. And this is like turning around a tanker, right? It's not like turning around a small boat. It takes time, but it's happening. And how do we acquire these new customers? That's the challenge with shrinking budgets and very little promotional budgets at the moment. But there are ways, and where there is a will, there's a way. And we're using social media and different and various tools to reach to those segments and let them know what an offer Spain has. But to sum it all up, we always say that sand and beach is our bread and butter. And I like to say that bread and butter is fine. It will be our staple for the next years, but we also want marmalade.
It is an international market, and it is a very competitive international market. And countries that don't have all of the natural benefits of Spain in terms of the beaches and the sun will also be looking to develop those cultural products and whatever. So whatever Spain's challenges, they have to recognise that that's the same line that quite a lot of other destinations are going down as well. So it's got to be very, very specific about why people would take that in Spain.
Is there a number at which you can say, yep, that's enough, you can stop, we don't need any extra new tourists now, thanks?
There is a discussion out there. What are the limits of destinations? How many people can a destination take in without affecting the travel experience? Because I think that's the key. It's not how many people you can take in, it's how many people you can take in that will go back with a good experience.
We need to get more sophisticated at understanding value rather than volume in tourism. So many ministers will measure themselves just on international arrivals without thinking about what is the spend, how long are people staying, let alone before you even talk about the pressure on the resources and the experience. It's just, is that maximising the profit? Would a more focused strategy on people who are spending more money, staying longer, produce more profit into the economy, the wider economy, than just international arrivals? And I think that's true of many destinations, that they haven't got the measurement to be able to really understand what the value is.
Magaluf and the local authorities in southern Mallorca coming out and saying we are transforming tourism in our part of the Balearics?
Well, I think Magaluf came to a point in which they realized that the business they were making with that type of tourism was not balancing the reputational cost of hosting that kind of tourist, and they decided that they didn't want to cater for that kind of tourist anymore, which I think it was a wise decision. It's something we are seeing in other places like Salou. They don't want to host this Olympic student gathering that they have every year. So I think Spain is moving on to the next step in the value chain of tourism, and that's the interesting discussion. How do we move up to the next step of the chain?
I have to say, I don't think any of us is proud of some of the behaviours that we've seen, but there has been a demand for it. I mean, the bars and Magaluf historically has been responding to a very, very strong demand from young people in particular for that kind of experience. And their economy has basically been living off that. So just turning that off and saying, right, we don't want any of those people and we want to only have people who love art in museums, you can't do it. You've got to basically find a way of signalling, of pricing, of transitioning from one thing to another, and that will take time. But then it will move, because I think people move by fashion, and when they understand that Magaluf is no longer the party destination and it's moved on to somewhere else in another country, they'll follow that.
Spain, the reserve currency of tourism. People will always regard it as a safe haven. They will return to Spain because they do not feel 100% secure about other destinations.
Well, I think Spain is 100% the reserve currency of travel industry, and we've seen that not just in the last 5 years, we've seen that time and again. It's also undeniable that we are profiting from a very unstable and insecure environment in our competitors, and this is sad. We are benefiting, and this is, I think, the main reason not to be complacent. This is the time in which we should invest in renovating our offer. We should invest in getting a strategy for the long run, and we should not rely on this unstable environment, because it won't last forever. It shouldn't last forever.
So there's no doubt that political unrest or terrorism, God forbid, does have an impact, I think, on short-term, where am I going? But I don't think, Spain is very good at tourism. I mean, we shouldn't forget, you've been at it a long time. You basically created, call it mass tourism, handling very large numbers, the logistics, the airports, the connections, the transfers, the accommodation. It's very hard to kind of move down that experience curve if you're a new country starting out. And I think, Spain should be, proud of that, recognise the strengths that it's got and build on those. And as you say, Enrique, not be complacent, because you do have to keep reinvesting in kind of modern properties, in modern infrastructure.
I want now to look at the wider global picture and the extent to which the numbers absolute numbers of travellers will continue to increase, or whether we should be, for example, worried economically about what is happening in China, which seems to be stalling in a way which is upsetting the markets and ultimately destabilising economies.
What tourism has proven time and again is that it's a very resilient sector. So travel will keep on growing. The question is, how do we make that growth compatible with the environment and with a sustainable in economic, social, and environmentally factors happen?
There's no doubt that the long-term growth in international arrivals, going back to that in tourism, seems set to continue. If you look at what's happening with the Eastern economies in China, people have talked about it in the last 10 years since I've been at ABTA. China as a source market, we're going to develop. People have put their toes in the water, then they've come out, they've tried it, but now for the first time you're seeing serious investment going into the Chinese as a source market. Whether it's cruise or other holidays, product is being developed specifically for that market in the way in which the entertainment, the food is delivered, and so forth.
But what would be the impact of Britain leaving the EU?
There'll be lots of, I think, frictional inconveniences, changing money and so forth. But also, I think, particularly for that part of tourism that is based on people who have villas which they own or properties abroad, I think there'll be some very significant changes for them in terms of suddenly, their children won't be able to work in the local bar without a work permit. They won't be entitled to local benefits. I think the economics of owning a property and jumping on a low-cost airline to fly down to it will be very different if we're not within the EU. So I think that segment of the market may be hit more profoundly than the traditional package.
The United Kingdom is already outside Schengen and is already outside the European currency. So I don't foresee a major impact in tourism. I agree with Mark on that. But 800,000 UK citizens own a property in Spain. And that's another market that we don't talk so much about, but it's a lot of investment.
One more, imponderable, the price of oil, because that clearly has a strong impact on the cost of reaching Spain and also on the cost of reaching alternative destinations.
I mean, I think the oil price has probably had a bigger impact on driving demand than a lot. It's not only because the flights are cheaper, but it's put money in people's pockets because their domestic heating bills are lower and so forth. And the impact of that plus the strong pound, we shouldn't underestimate that people have got a lot more in their pockets than they had maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
The low cost of oil means that airlines, the travel industry is more inclined to offer a greater number of long-haul destinations.
Yes, it's making long-haul flights cheaper, and that's a competitor of certain types of holidays in Spain, but it's not just the price of the ticket, it's how many hours does it take you to get there. So Spain is really competing with medium and short-haul destinations.
The vast majority of people will be flying on EasyJet, on Ryanair, on Vueling, on a low-cost schedule carrier rather than a charter aircraft. Will charters be eliminated? Do they still have a role? And if they are eliminated, what will the effect be on the shape of the market from Britain to Spain?
Again and again, it's consumer that drives change, and it's consumer that drives how travel is sold, and consumer will be always the driving force, and that's why charters have the days numbered.
If you were a shareholder of those companies, you feel that some of the food has been taken off your plate for sure. In fact, companies have gone. We've seen consistent consolidation of the market, and the growth has really gone to those new arrivals, and it's not just in the airline sector; it's the online sector too. New companies have arrived out of the thin air really and created very successful online businesses, while the traditional, if you put it like that, tour operator market has carried on with its business, and they've taken a lot of the growth that has been in the market.
Low-cost airlines have disrupted the model, and now you cannot operate if you're not low-cost. So practically legacy and low-cost have converged in low-cost prices, and low-cost airlines have increased a little bit the service. So I think the difference is now very thin.
If someone asked me to name the one organisation that represented the greatest threat to you and your members, everything that the traditional travel industry stands for, it would probably be Airbnb. Is that fair?
The speed at which the accommodation peer-to-peer market has developed has been amazing, and now you have some very sophisticated products who are actually looking to distribute that product through the travel agent trade. So far from being the nemesis, is actually here we've got a product, it's high margin, it's quality controlled, you can make a commission and you can sell it. The challenge for us as sort of an association and as a regulator is, how do you bring the same level of confidence to that in terms of health and safety? Are they paying taxes and so forth? How do you recognise there's demand for that, because they are responding to a consumer demand, but make it a safe product for customers to use? And then I think the industry will find ways of working with the accommodation peer-to-peer sector.
I think a lot of what is labelled P2P in accommodation, I'm talking now, it's actually B2P, business to peer, because there are many rooms that are being sold that are owned by companies, so it's a distortion of the P2P. private person selling or making a transaction with a private person, or sometimes it's a company that owns a lot of rooms that is making a transaction with individuals. So I think that's something that has to be looked at before destinations could control the capacity of accommodation just by issuing hotel licenses. Now you've lost that control because people can basically put in the market new accommodation units that are not under the umbrella of government, so to speak, control accommodation. That puts pressure on the destinations. And there are many destinations in Spain in which you have now more non-hotel accommodation than hotel accommodation. So that's an issue. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It's an issue. You have to look at it.
You cannot license this accommodation, neither can you quality control it. Do we need some overarching regulation, and where is that going to come from?
Airbnb has a market capitalization of 60 billion euro. The way to address this is a light touch regulation in which they will have to collect taxes and apply and abide to safety and security and some health and quality regulation.
There's lots of disruptive organisations such as TripAdvisor who now have a very handy book on TripAdvisor button. Isn't that marvellous? And that Michael O'Leary, he told me this morning that Ryanair is going to become the Amazon of Europe, in the sense that whatever you want to do connected with travel, rent a car, find somewhere to stay, effectively it will be Ryanair Airbnb for anything you might want. That's not very good for you, is it, Mark? Since that's rather saying travel agents, who needs them?
When we do our research as to what makes people feel confident when they travel, what it shows is that you haven't got one set of people that they're always confident and they're not confident. Sometimes you think, well, I'm going on a point-to-point flight, I'm very happy to do it with Ryanair because it's me, I'm travelling on my own. What's the downside? Same person travelling 3 months later with a family and 2 children feels very differently about the level of support they want, the level of expertise, and so forth. Package holiday has not shrunk. In all of the stories about the demise of it and other people who come, it stayed very steady. The growth has gone to other people doing that, but actually you look at the number of ATOL licenses sold, it hasn't diminished because people want that particular product.
Booking.com, with Expedia, with now TripAdvisor, wanting a large slab of the margin, of the hoteliers' margin. How are the hoteliers of Spain feeling at the moment? Do they think there's anything they can do to counter these organisations saying, yeah, we'll send you plenty of guests, but we're going to take 18% of your revenue, Squire?
Again, I think hotels that invest in differentiation, that they do not commoditize the offer, will have better leverage to negotiate with OTAs that hotels that have not invested and became commodities.
There are occasions where these booking engines will say to the hotel, you can't sell at a lower price than is available on our engine, and that I think is anti-competitive. I think if a hotel says, okay, I've got to sell through whatever, Mark Tanzer, hotels.com, but at least if someone comes to me directly, I can offer a kind of a better rate. That at least is a fair field. If you say you'll only be listed with me if you basically guarantee you won't undercut me, that seems not in the interest of the consumer.
The Balearics tried to introduce a tourism tax, a couple of euros per night on a room. It didn't work, but now there is talk of similar tax applying. Is it something that the consumer is prepared to tolerate?
We're not against any kind of room tax ever being applied as a matter of principle. It's just, what is it used for? Is it really going to help develop the tourist economy, or is it just going to go into general taxation? And if it's the latter, then we think it is a useless tax, and it will ultimately result in a diminished demand for that location.
If it's for the environment, it's clear that it is. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about this tax now, that we don't know what is going to be used for, and until the Balearic government explains what they want to do and how they want to do it. I don't have any other position than our minister, which is against any tax that will reduce competitiveness of a destination. The challenge now is to make holidays in Spain from mono-destination to multi-destination. So the Brits have been used for decades to go to one place, unpack the suitcase, lie on a lounge for 14 days, pack the suitcase, go back. Now they want them to pack and unpack 3-4 times during the same trip.
And do you do that by harnessing Renfe, just by saying that we have the most marvellous high-speed network, and so you can quite reasonably combine Barcelona, or even better, Valencia with Madrid, or Sevilla, Cordoba, Malaga on the same trip? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, well, we're promoting trains, we're promoting cycling tours, we're promoting fly and drive, which funnily enough doesn't happen, I don't know why, in Spain. We're promoting using a boat to spend your holidays, so we're promoting routes, we're promoting people to explore more and to enjoy multi-destination holidays. And that's one of the key things in our strategy now.
If you can't find it in Spain, you're probably better off without it. My favourite event in World Travel Market is the Spanish press conference, because you get great speakers, you get a lovely audience, you get a chance to talk to our friends in Spain. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been a lovely audience. Please thank our fantastic speakers, Enrique Ruiz and Mark Tanzer of ABTA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Well done.